one with Bayern Munich, with Augustus, who was obviously a big fan for the Bayern crew down there. It was a good time. We talked about the keys of the game. We had some great insights and some insights from the other fans as well. And this time we thought that we would repeat it with the next game that we have, which is with Real Madrid in the league. And so we have Sid from Managing Madrid, who has joined us and who will be talking obviously about the Madrid side or the Madrid point of view while we talk about Barca. The format will more or less be the same. We'll go a little bit of formations that we think that each individual team will deploy, and then we'll look into the last 5 games and the most current stats and what they talk about the teams, and are there any insights to be taken from there in terms of whether the coaches can use some of that insight to build some tactics, what have you, create some advantages in that sense. It'll be an interesting game in the league. So without further ado, gentlemen, welcome Dom, welcome Sid to the preview show.
Yeah. Thank you, Dev. That was a good intro. Yeah, we had massive success last week with the Bayern preview, so we figured why not make the Classical preview live as well? And who better to have on this preview with us than Sid? Sid, thank you so much for joining again. It's a pleasure to have you. Last time we were in Magic Madrid, so you were kind enough to host us. So we figured we would return the favor and have you here with us as well. So how are you feeling? How are things?
Yeah, I mean, I was when you guys appointed Flick in the summer. At that time, I looked at this date. I'm like, yes, I circled it on the calendar, and I can't say I'm as confident as that time anymore. Unfortunately, I unfortunately you guys are entering this Classico in a good moment. Though usually the feeling you have going into a Classico, sometimes it doesn't matter, as we all know. So maybe it's a good thing that you guys are happy, and maybe it's gonna trick you guys into setting you up for disappointment. But I mean, hey, you have Bayern and Real Madrid. It's a big week for you.
Yeah.
Everyone's watching you closely, and yeah, I mean, I have different reservations about your team, but
Mhm.
early in this at this stage in the season, I'm a little more concerned about your strengths and
Mhm.
how you can damage us. That I'm worried about the Classico going wrong for sure. So excited to talk about
Mhm.
all that.
hmm Yeah, that's true. I mean, we do feel confident just at the minute, and we are in good form. And we obviously have Sevilla before the Bayern game and before the Clasico, so that's kind of a banana slip for us potentially. We'll see how that one goes, and I guess that game will also tell us what players might feature for the upcoming Clasico as well, because we do have some players returning from injury, and we'll see if Flick can actually kind of ease them in through Sevilla and potentially Bayern, and then we get to Clasico, and then we'll see what happens. But yeah, anyway, I think I can transfer us to the tactics board and see what we can do with that. So let's get things cracking and to share my screen, and then we can see what we can do there. Obviously, right. Oh, there we go. You can see me, right? See the screen. Good. So what I would like to start with, well, 3 things actually. So the first thing is obviously the basic structure that we started with Bayern as well. Basic structure of both teams, some personnel, some doubts, some potential changes in the roster that you can see on the left side of the screen as well. And then I'll talk about one key thing for Barca, one key thing for Madrid, and then said you can obviously tell me more what you think will happen, what you think Madrid will do, and we'll take it from there. So anyway, starting with Barca, I think it's mainly the same thing as last week, where you have a structure that's kind of set in stone, more or less. Barca do play in a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, with this left side of midfielder kind of floating in and out, going up and going down, depending on what the team needs in the moment. So it can be a more of a 4-3-3 if Pedri is higher. It can be a 4-2-3-1 with a double pivot, which is kind of the thing that Flick likes to have in the initial phase at least. And then you have Olmo here, who obviously is still a question mark, but I think he will feature. He will probably feature in some form at least. And then he kind of goes. This triangle is kind of the Olmo triangle, so he can be the player between the lines, player deeper, and also going forward into the box kind of as well. So that's kind of the Barca thing, and there are some question marks, obviously. Pena being probably the first one because we don't know who's going to play. I mean, Flick came out today and he said that Pena will be the starting keeper for Sevilla and Bayern. He didn't mention Madrid yet, so I'm guessing if Pena plays those 2 games, he'll probably play the third one as well. And then, obviously, Chesney is someone whose quality is much higher if he's fit and if he's match sharp. But at the moment, I don't think he fully is. So Flick might just give Pena the shot and just Pena be the starting goalkeeper going forward into these clashes as well. Then obviously you have players like Frankie De Jong and players like Gavi and Fermin who might feature, but at the same time they're coming off an injury, and would it be wise to just throw him into the classic or throw him into the Bayern clash? Because yes, the quality of Frankie De Jong, for example, over Casado might be the thing, but also there's no synergy just now. There's no telling how fit Frankie is, and can he actually play from the start of the game, and that's the same goes for Gavi, basically, who can play in all these three midfield positions. But then again, how fit is Gavi going to be, or should Flick even play him from the start as well? So those are questions kind of the Barca need to answer, the Flick needs to answer ahead of the game, which we don't know. But I would say that this is kind of what we go with. Rafinha as the left winger there. Obviously, he is more of a number 10 hybrid, which, he just cuts in, creates this box sometimes, but also he can be the distribution profile from this left side and then also go into the box and shoot from there as well. So we know who Rafinha is, what he does. Lamine as well. This is the Lamine area, the most dangerous area for Barcelona. Everyone knows how that will work. Now, on the Madrid side, Sid, I think you might know more than I do, but I think the biggest point of interest is obviously this right back position without Carvajal. So who fills that, and what do Madrid do on that side? Because yes, Vasquez can do a job, and I think he will be the guy Ancelotti will look to. But at the same time, he's not really a right back, right? so I don't know if there's some rotations you might do there. I mean, you could technically have Valverde there as well, and then kind of push Camavinga in midfield, and then have this double pivot there, or you could also have Militao as the right back, kind of there, push Tchouaméni into the center back position, and have Valverde and Camavinga as a double pivot, which I feel like is a very good double pivot to have as well. Kind of more defensive coverage, more mobility going forward, good reception from the back as well. So there's potential in this double pivot as well, I feel like. Or you could also do something completely different and, and maybe even put Mendy on this. I don't know how viable that would be, but you could put Mendy there as well. Maybe Camavinga on the left side of the pitch, and then you have sort of a Valverde, Tchouaméni double pivot with Mendy on the right and Camavinga on the left. So there's a lot of possibilities that you do have. I'm not sure what you will go for, but I think the most likely scenario would be probably Vasquez on the right, and then the rest of the team kind of picks itself. So any initial thoughts here, Sid, before I move on?
Yeah, I mean, over the course of the full season, all those solutions you pointed out with Mendy, Militao at right back are definitely quite possible. I think next week, though, Vasquez at right back is quite likely. Maybe, just maybe, Militao gets moved over there for Tchouaméni. I think if Rafinha keeps getting behind Vasquez, which isn't always a problem, like running behind. I think more of he's not as good a one-on-one defender as Carvajal from what I've seen, because we've had seasons before, like 2020, 21, where Carvajal was out a lot and Vasquez had to play right back for teams that kept the ball quite a bit, and he was quite successful. But as a pure defender, he's not the same. But keeping the ball and even covering space, he's not that bad. So I think he plays, and I'd be a little more worried if he was matched up with Lamine Yamal than if it was the same situation on the other side. Not that Rafinha is not a great player, but he's not as scary one-on-one, I feel like.
No.
So in that context, I think Vasquez will start, and I think he'll be fine. The midfield should be like that. I do think Camavinga looks better than Tchouaméni at points. In that pivot, just because he can dribble it so much, and with Modric there, you want everyone else to be mobile, to be able to make off-ball runs into space and dribble into space when they receive the ball. But Modric has also been quite calm in big games. He's just been Sociedad, he was huge. Atletico, he was big. Villarreal, he was big. He's played some big games for the team this season. So I think it's quite possible that he starts there. And if he doesn't, which I'm not sure, I think he will continue starting in a lot of big games. But if he doesn't, we could see Arda Güler starting in that role over Rodrigo. I don't know. Maybe Ancelotti, or Ancelotti puts Rodrigo there too. That's also possible.
Mhm. Oh,
Because
that's
yeah, because he wants to hit you guys in transition. Rodrigo will play on the right. He will run behind Balde. He doesn't have to come inside.
right, right, yeah.
Yeah, because this season he's kind of come around to just playing a little wider because we have no choice as a team. It doesn't
Hmm.
work otherwise. Mbappe
Hmm.
also peels to the right a little bit. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I think if there's a game this season where we have to play in transition, it's this one. So we have to
Mhm.
attack you, and you don't want to playing too many midfielders could just see us could see you just box us in.
Right, yeah, that's kind of the thing, and it feels like Madrid this season they're not really they're more geared towards that long ball approach anyway. I feel like it's not really they don't really have that many short to medium passing options when they're building from the back, and obviously you are very asymmetrical as well. So Vasquez, if he's the right back, he would have to be more of a winger, right? So then you would have some sort of a back three with Mendy being more of a third center back sort of thing. Vinicius obviously peels to the left. Mbappe also kind of follows. Bellingham is there as kind of the number 10 and the third attacker who does these runs as well. Modric would be a bit wider as well, kind of maybe here. And then obviously the points of interest there for Real Madrid when they attack is the isolation here that happens. So obviously Balde will be a bit deeper. So if Vasquez and Balde are isolated there, that's a point of interest. And then you have isolations for Mbappe over there, and obviously for Vinicius over there out wide. So this is kind of for Barcelona. This is what they should be looking out for. I feel like because I've seen a lot of times Madrid do these switches. So it's overload to isolate, and it's textbook overload to isolate. Where you have it's sort of a meme at this point, right? Where you have so many players down the left side, and then the right is isolated, and then you have a one big switch. Not from Mendy maybe, but you have one big switch to the other side to the isolation, and obviously you do have these Mbappe versus Kubarsi and Vinicius versus Kunde because we don't have Araujo, right? We don't have Araujo for Vinicius this time around, so it'll be interesting to see how Kunde handles this isolation if it happens, right? Because and then Mbappe can make these runs over here beyond Kubarsi into this area, and he can receive the ball from Vinicius if that's the play that he will make. But that also kind of opens the space for Bellingham, who we know can be that third or fourth attacker for Madrid, and he often is. And he can attack the space really, really well and be the threat here. And then obviously Vasquez would have to be more of a winger on this side, unless you have Rodrigo, as you mentioned, because Rodrigo can be your winger if needs be. But if he's not on the pitch, then Vasquez would probably, as the right back, be more of a touchline kind of player, right? And then that does create, as you mentioned, some points of interest for Barcelona because the obvious one is that space over here. Can Vasquez be the player to shuttle up and down the pitch to kind of mitigate that weakness? Because okay, you have Rafinha here, who's not maybe the most prolific one, which is one player, but he can exploit space, right? And Barca do have distribution from the back as well. They do have Enigo, they have Kubarsi, they do have Kunde even, and maybe even Casado, who are the players who can be deep and then play the balls into that space behind Vasquez once he inevitably pushes up in this asymmetrical fashion, asymmetrical shape that is. But sometimes Madrid, what they do, what I've seen them do is they instruct Valverde to be kind of the shield behind the right back, so he will peel wide and try and stop Rafinha or whoever that is on that side. But that also creates another problem, which is the midfield, because then in theory you only have Camavinga or whoever that is here, maybe Chouameni. Where is he? Oh yeah, that's Chouameni. So you have Chouameni and Modric, for example, against 3 players or 4 players, depending on how Barca structured the attack in this area. So those are the 2 main ways Barca could hurt you theoretically. At least that's the clearest way I see Barca exploiting your shape at the moment. So it's either Rafinha being in this space out wide if Valverde decides to stay central, but then if Valverde peels wide, then there's an overload potentially in this area down the middle, because as we know, Barca have been number 1 vertical this season. Number 2, they've been very focused on this central area of the pitch. So this trident of Pedri, Olmo, Casado, and then of course Lamine shuttling inside, Lewandowski dropping in as well. This is where Barca want to create the majority of their attack. So I feel like if Valverde is not there to cover, then the overloads for Barca might happen in this area of the pitch, because Bellingham will be a very attacking minded, right? He does drop deeper. He is very press resistant in the ball as well. He can be your deep player, but more or less he's the third or the fourth attacker for Madrid. So I feel like if Madrid are not compact enough, and there's a clear line between this front four, front three, and the midfield, that there's definitely space to be exploited for Barcelona.
Yeah, definitely. And Fede always has to do the job of two players in one, between playing at right back and then tracking back into midfield once the
Mm-hmm.
defenders have time to get back. And to an extent, Jude as well, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of pressing the defenders and then also being the first one to get back and help form the midfield line together.
Mm-hmm.
So it won't be easy. Those two are a little overworked right now.
Yeah.
That's one big concern with them, and and just defensively, like the team in general, Ancelotti doesn't set up the team defensively to be very sound. Even in the Clásicos we've won, yes, the Clásicos we've won, we've defended well at times, but defense has not been Ancelotti's strength. It's been a lot of offense is how we won these titles. Or
Yeah.
last season it was the immense technical quality in midfield helped a lot, and then Vinny took us all the way.
Yeah.
This season there's no control, so the lack of control, it means the players are having to do a lot of, like you said earlier, we're doing a lot of long balls and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
runs up and down the pitch, a lot of box to box play,
Yeah.
and it's not working as well. It's not the best style of football. It's just in a big game like this, you can win playing long ball football.
Yeah.
But defensively, it's not looking good. There's a lot of confusion on how they're going to track their matchups, and Vinny
Yeah.
and Mbappe not defending makes it very hard. I'm pretty scared to see how that goes in a big game.
Mm-hmm.
I expect one of them to actually defend. Like I expect Vinny to track back a little bit, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even Mbappe. We haven't seen that before though.
Yeah, that's always a big question. We have these superstars who are kind of used to having that superstar treatment, but yeah, I think defensively, what I've seen, it's generally a 4-4-2 kind of function, with the center backs being very narrow, and just being the whole shape is kind of narrow, because I feel like what Madrid often do, I mean, and that's kind of the case in Europe as well, where they're kind of happy to cede possession, happy to cede control, and then they will hurt you in transition, because they have so much quality there as well. So I think for Barca, a point of interest again is this high line that they practice in the offside trap, because this is the first time they're facing someone of Mbappe's in Vinny's quality in transition. And to be fair, those two players are more of ball carriers than they are space exploiters, if that makes sense. So they do like to kind of receive to ball to feet and then carry the ball from the deeper areas and forward, and not really run into space and then expect the ball to be played into space like that. So there's that to consider, but still the transitional threat that you have is immense, and I think this will be the biggest test for our offside trap and the high line to date. But yeah, defensively, as I said, it's kind of sketchy, because you kind of yield control, yield some space to certain areas. For example, this area right here in the pivot, and then the wide areas as well. I feel like teams can kind of not easily, but they can access these areas with less effort, I want to say. So if you circulate the ball, this player in possession, so for example, Castro, if he peels a bit back and receives the ball from the back line, I think there won't be much pressure on him at all times. Instead, Madrid want to protect these pockets, right? So they will leave the wings and the pivot kind of more free, but then these pockets for Olmo, for example, and for Pedri will be much more covered. So Madrid want to stop all at any central progression, all any penetration from these areas, and they just want you to circulate the ball, from one wing to the other, create this infamous U shape of death, and do absolutely nothing. And you are quite comfortable defending in individual duels. You have individual quality for those duels, but you kind of do depend on that. And I'm not sure how if Barca are forced out wide into these crossed into the box, I would be more confident in Real Madrid actually defending them than Barca scoring from those crosses. So if that's the case, if that's the setup that Barca are forced to play in, I don't think they will have the necessary tools to kind of hurt Madrid as much. And then obviously that kind of creates the possibility of Madrid then starting a transition and attacking Barcelona with those long balls and using Mbappe and Vini. But I do think it's better to have Mbappe and Vinicius as the secondary receiver. So if your midfield gets the ball first in transition and then gets the ball to Mbappe and Vinicius, that's much better than Mbappe being the one getting the ball first and then having to go down the whole channel and carry that ball forward. So that's one thing to kind of take into account here. So for Barca, it will be how well drilled are we to kind of breach this 4-4-2 solid block that we will create, and you will try and stop any progress into these pockets right there. And for Madrid, it will be how do they make sure that Barca just circulate the ball slowly from wing to wing when they are in possession and not allow that penetration to happen. So those will be my 2 pointers for Barca and Madrid side. I'm not sure if there's anything to add from either of you. Dev, any of your thoughts, any of your questions?
Yeah, I mean, there's some players who play very well against Barca all the time. Vasquez is one of them. He always
Mm-hmm.
plays good against us for some reason. So I think that'll add in. I'm curious about whether you feel Gavi is going to play in that midfield of ours, and if that the case, then is it Frankie or is it Pedri, Gavi, and Olmo? Because I think the front line takes care of itself. It will be Lamine, it will be
Yeah.
Lewandowski, and it will be Rafinha. The
Mm-hmm.
defense also, we don't really have that many number of players, so we'll have to go with what we have, which is basically Kubarsi, Nico,
Yeah.
Balde, and Kunde. So those are just they take care of themselves. Just a midfield where we have like 5,000 people waiting for that one spot to play, or is it Furman? Or that'll be critical because, as you rightly pointed out, that central channel is going to be hard, and if you lose the ball there,
Mm-hmm.
and for sure Madrid is going to play on the counter. For sure, Madrid is going to try to get the ball behind that high line, that absurd high line that Flick has. And
Yeah.
while we've been lucky with those 61 whatever offsides that we have had, Madrid
Mm-hmm.
does have better players to break that trap.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've got an Mbappe or a Vinicius free, it's going to be hard
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
zone. If that happens specifically with the Pina, I think, and once that happens in the first 10 20 minutes of the game, then the game complexion completely changes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if in that midfield, if Bellingham becomes free, he has that ability, right, and the
Yeah.
skills to really come into that zone of 14 and cause problems. Because if you look at Barca's defense map, most of our tackles, most of our defensive wins happen on the flanks. They don't happen in the center. On the center, we are quite actually a little bit weak in terms of when the threat comes.
Mm-hmm.
Quite different data when Araujo is here, but he's not there. So that center, and then that's where Bellingham likes playing. If he can be serviced, which he can with the likes of Modric and so on, there'll be that threat
Yeah.
in that transition play. Though it would, I have to say that probably for the first time in history, Barca has, like, for now, a better transition play than Madrid right now with this team, with Flick, post Flick, because generally it has always been Madrid far better than us, and so on. So yeah, that'll be interesting, that first half on how that works out. My question was, like, how much of a miss will Carvajal be to Sid based on this team and what he brings to the team, not just as his skill set, but just like he's a warrior. He goes for everything.
I think less so for one-off games like this one-off game. Maybe it matters the least because, anyways, everyone gets up for El Clasico. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need extra motivation. But for the week to week, for the whole season, I know it's seen as much harder within the dressing room. Um, he's a big leader for the team. Like he replaced Sergio Ramos. His full name is Daniel Carvajal Ramos. So he was like our big leader of the last couple of years. So no question he's missed. But for one game, I hope he's not missed too much, at least for this one game. There are also matchups where if the left winger is a really good dribbler, it will be
Mm-hmm.
problematic. Rafinha is not the type that
No,
scares me as much. He just seems like a winger who likes attacking the space behind,
yeah.
crossing. I feel like Vasquez can handle those things a little more.
hmm Yeah, that's true. I mean, Rafinha is not going to hurt you in this versus one. He's going to hurt you by moving into these areas right here or being the distribution from the left side. Because if we're just talking about crosses, in particular, Rafinha is the one to deploy crosses from this side, right? And to go to your question, Dev, about Gavi and Thurman and Frankie, I think the only reasonable thing to do here. I think Frankie, if he's gonna play, he will play. He will play ahead of Casado, but I don't think that will happen. I think that he might get minutes if if the situation requires it, and so can Fermin and Gavi. Fermin can play instead of Rafinha or instead of Olmo. That's the only two options I would give Fermin because he needs to be either a number 10 in these zones over here. So minimal touches in the deep build up, minimal touches and actually controlling the play and being the pocket player. He needs to be number 10, very attacking number 10, or a sort of a false winger on the left and do these runs and be as close to the goal as possible. So that's Fermin for me. Now, Gavi, he can play in any of these three midfield positions. Now, all depends on his fitness, right? If he is to play, I would say, he replaces Casado here. Then you have Pedri, Gavi, and Olmo, which on paper is an upgrade on Casado again, but I just don't know what shape Gavi's going to be in. If he's going to be let's say risked for this game. There's also the Sevilla game and the Bayern game before that, so he might get some minutes there, and then we'll see if he's fit enough and if he's back to his former self to play the Clasico. But I don't think he starts. I think if he plays, he will play in the latter stages of the game, replacing one of the players, being maybe that trump card from the bench, and then we'll see what happens. But I would say that on paper, this is what we would get if Guy was to start. He would probably replace Casado because I don't think that Olmo and Pedri are droppable for this game in any shape or form. If they're both fit, obviously Olmo is a question mark, I guess. If Olmo's not fit, then you can have more rotations. It's very difficult to say at this point. But I think the Sevilla game will already give us some answers to those questions, because we'll see, okay, in what shape are those players, and how does Flick plan to kind of lead them back into the squad? Because I think there's still a week or so until the Clasico, right? What is the date of the Clasico? I don't even know. But we do have some time ahead of us to see. So a couple of games before the Clasico to see both teams operating without some of the key players like Carvajal and Vasquez and then Olmo and Gavi and Frankie. So I think we'll get more answers as we head into the week. But as of right now, I think this is what Barca will go with, and it's the right thing to do. Is the right thing to do at this point, from my point of view, Dev.
So the other question is, and this just said again, we will obviously not know. We watch from the outside, and we watch a few games here and there, but we don't know everything about the team. But would seem like that the excitement around Chomini is a little bit less than it was a couple of seasons with the Madrid faithful. When you see him, is that true? Number one, or is he really delivering like to what the fans expected him to be, and the player that he was expected to be, and so on and so forth? Or is there something out there in the terms of his performances and what he's bringing to the table for Madrid?
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to it. There's the big void Cruz's left, which has made it harder for some players to deliver. But then there is also what Chouameni has done at times, which has not been as great as you'd expect. So I just start with Chouameni. When he came to Madrid, his first few months, he was amazing. And that was with Cruz in the lineup. And that was the World Cup year. So the World Cup comes, he has a pretty good World Cup for France. And then that season, he's not the same after that. And he's been up and down ever since. Last season, he was injured a couple times. And he looked really great only when he played for France. He looked good at times for us, but he had to play center back, and between all that, he just got lost in getting suspended in like the big game against Man City. He was suspended for the second leg. So within all that, not as consistent in when and where he was playing. Um, he looked good for France in the summer. and then again inconsistently good here. So
Mhm.
what I see is a player who has to take more responsibility and who's just been getting hurt here and there. The fitness has made it hard for him to play. Like he hasn't played 4 or 5 months without getting hurt, and or having a World Cup or something just change the momentum of his season. So I think if he were to be healthy for a long time, or if the coach were to do a slightly better job with him, I think we could be fine. So he's not as versatile as Camavinga, who
Mm.
can receive back to goal. He
Mhm.
can receive every angle, and he can, with a couple touches, he can dribble out of that too. So no matter where you're pressuring from, it doesn't matter. Chouameni, when he's not like facing goal with all the options available to him, he struggles when he has to look around more. He's not as good at scanning and moving around and dealing with complex situations as Valverde or Camavinga. And Valverde is really good, but we just need more from Chouameni, I guess. And out of all the midfielders, he's the one we need more from in Cruz's absence. So yeah, a little bit of a complex answer, but I'm think leaning towards saying he can do more, and he will
Mhm.
at some point because of what we see with France. Even this last break, like just the stats, like he scores, like he puts up 90 passes for France on pretty good accuracy, and he doesn't always get there for Real Madrid. I just don't believe that's his skill. I think the coaching also plays a role, and Carlo as a coach isn't like he doesn't structure the build up as much as say Flick. He's
Mhm.
he's a lot more of like letting you figure it out there, and I don't think that's going to work for Chouameni in this system.
Mhm.
And if we talk about the other elephant in the room per se, again, we are from the outside, and we don't know everything, and we don't also obviously follow the games as much as closely. But how much is the congestion on the flank between Mbappe, Vinicius, Rodrigo? How much is it actually affecting the team, or is it just media making noise? Or as fans who have been like your passionate fans, obviously watching the like everything about Real Madrid, do you think that is really a concern and that Carlo needs to fix, or is this just noise?
He's slowly been fixing it. I don't think it's the main concern. I think the main concern is the lack of a nine, or like the lack of a
Metoselu.
Joselu. Yep, yeah, the lack of a Joselu, or the lack of someone who's there who lets you Mbappe and Vinny and Rodrigo make runs off them. Right now, the only one who kind of does that is Jude, and he's arriving from deep a lot.
Yeah.
So he's not pinning the center backs often enough. Because he's busy stitching play together and feeding the attackers. So because he's busy doing that, you don't have the guy who distracts both the center backs at the same time. Mbappe doesn't. The like I'd say Mbappe and Vinny, they do have a lot of danger running in behind too, but it hasn't been used this season. They've been stuck as being carriers because there's no nine, and
Yeah.
the actual spacing with Mbappe and Rodrigo has slowly gotten better. Mbappe has started moving out to the right more. Rodrigo has played more on the right when he's played than in previous seasons. So the spacing has gotten better, but I think he needs to definitely, like with Chouameni, I think the coach needs to figure out how he can put the players in a better position. Because if there's no striker, you can still do it. You can
Hmm.
still score, but you need the timing of the movements to be precise. Because right now, Vinny and Mbappe, like when they get there, the defenders know what's coming from them. There's no striker to like distract them.
Mhm. Yeah. That is a big point. There's no one to pin the center backs and provide them constant danger. And yes, I guess having all these players on one side has its drawbacks, but it also has its positives as well. Having that big of an accumulation of quality on one side allows you kind of to play through them as well. I mean, if Mbappe and Mbappe and Vinicius are ever in an isolated duel against Kunde and Kubarsi, that's proper danger. And especially if they can combine with each other and feed off of Bellingham's passes or Modric's passes, that's always going to be a threatening thing to do. So there's definitely there's definitely kinks there for Ancelotti to kind of figure out. But as I said he's kind of more of a coach who will let the players figure it out by themselves, let them play their own game, and he's not there to tell them, okay, you make this pass, make that pass, you make this movement at that movement. He believes the players know better than him because they are of such quality that they can actually do it themselves. But yeah, anyway, I will stop my share here, guys. Sid, I'm not sure if you want to share your board, or should we go to the stats?
Oh, we can go to the stats. We can go ahead and look at the stats.
All right, okay. Let's do some statistics. Okay. So obviously this is just, I looked at a bunch of stuff, but mostly across the last 5 games from each team to get, sense of um, the present form more than anything else. Um, and then the understanding was to look at it and compare it and see if there are glaring trends that can be picked up by either team to compensate, or to build a strategy or what have you, and so on and so forth. So if you look into this one from a defensive, so you can see it's for Barca, it's a lot more evenly distributed, and the pressing is quite um, so it's a lot more spread out. That's what you would see. So, and they maintain this high line, correct, to disrupt the opponent's build up play and so on and so forth. And for sure, they're probably going to use long quick transitions and maybe long balls as well to bypass that mid block. That probably, in all possibility, Madrid is going to go with that mid block, right? But Madrid has a higher concentration, right? If you look at the signs, the defensive actions are inside in that penalty area. And they're much better with Militao and Rudiger. They are far better at last ditch defending than Kubarsi and Inigo per se. So they'll definitely concentrate on that. And as I said a little bit earlier, ours is a lot more wider on the flanks than in the center. So that's an area of weakness, I would say, for us, which the likes of Rodrigo and Bellingham, if they do quick interplays, one-to-ones, can be challenging for us to tackle with. For us, however, obviously the same, but on the other side, that when Pedri is obviously deployed a lot more higher these days, and he's doing a lot more recoveries in the final third in this season with Flick, and then if the interplay happens with Olmo in those short passes in between, and then you can release a runner or feed Lewandowski in the box, then there's problem for that. So based on that, like, guys, do you think any takeaways from this from both of you?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to me to look at this Real Madrid map, because look at in the box, those central areas, it's all interceptions. So that's very very interesting for me to see. I mean, so that would be the last ditch that you talked about. That just maybe instead of just being in a duel, they just intercept the balls. They kind of cut off that pass before engaging in those duels. So that's quite impressive for me to see. And as I said, Barca are usually they focus more on the wide areas because that's where the opposition usually attacks us. We do leave space in those areas, so that's where the opposition efforts usually come from. And having Vinicius, having Mbappe on the left side, that will be interesting to see how Koundé and Kubarsi can drift and work together. How Casado can actually, if he plays, he probably will play. How does he complement that defensive structure as well? We know that he's a good defender. If we localize his area, if we put a smaller area for him to defend, he'll be okay. But if Mbappe and Vinny can actually stretch the pitch and make those runs or carry the ball, then we could be in in real trouble from their perspective. Sid, anything from you?
Yeah, nothing specific. Like you said, it seems like Real Madrid, all the interception. Once you get to the box, it's all interceptions. Maybe passes from out wide are all intercepted. Whereas for Barcelona, you still have interceptions, but you also have defensive duels everywhere. So it's more of an even mix. So that's definitely interesting to see. And a lack of interceptions from Real Madrid outside the box. Not too many.
All right. This is about how we are losing the duels in our own third, and that's why this is important, is because given the quality of attackers that you have in both teams, right? So if you're losing those duels, my point was that the sheer numbers are so I didn't expect it to be especially the number of opponent shots after losing a duel is so much more higher in the last 5 games for Madrid compared to Barca. It says two things: that our offside trap really works, so we don't have to do it. Most of those attacks get curtailed before that, and that's why the numbers are so less. But if you break that trap, then we can be in trouble. For Madrid, though, if this is what it is, and we can create those shots, we do have those players in Olmo, Pedri, Lamine, Rafinha. All of them can actually be there on that second ball and take that shot and what have you. So, any thoughts on how the coaches might be looking to exploit some of this? Because this is what the nature of the team is.
Exactly. I mean, what you said, Dev, that was bang on. The reason we don't have that many duels is because our offside trap works the way it works, right? So we either catch them offside, or we can stop the ball at the source in the distribution. So we don't want to be in these duels, because if we do get into these duels, then we're in trouble, because we don't have players that can track long distance and back. We have Castle and Pedri in midfield in a double pivot, and that's not a double pivot that you want running a lot and running large stretches of the pitch, right? So that's if you put them in those positions, you're practically lost, right? So they are good defenders, but they're not good large distance defenders, if that makes sense. The same for Koundé, I think, and Kubarsi and Indigo. They're all good defenders in their own right, but I wouldn't bank on them beating Vini and Mbappe,
No,
9 and 8 times out of 10. It's just
they
impossible,
won't be
right?
able to.
So they have what Barca have to keep doing is stopping the ball at the source, or likely catch them offside, because that's what we've been doing now. As you said, this quality of opposition is unlike anything we've faced so far. So it will be a real test, and I think Flick will maintain that strategy. I think he's something of a purist in that regard, where he won't really change drastically regardless of the opposition. So we'll likely see the same thing from Barcelona. Now, how effective that can be, that's a different story. On the Madrid side, yeah, a lot more duels are necessary, and there's these shots after lost duels. That's what Barca can exploit, because we do like a good counter press. We do like to be aggressive under Flick, and if we can box Madrid in and keep sustaining that pressure and then using the counter press to build off of that, I think that is a proper chance. For Madrid, it'll be more individual quality base. It'll be more, Vinicius can fire a rocket outside the box. Valverde can do the same thing. But Bellingham can do the same thing like the last Clasico. So they have tools purely based on individual quality that we might not possess. So I think that's definitely an edge for them. But yeah, happy to hear what you have to say, Sid.
Yeah, just mainly concerning looking at the stats here. It seems like even if you guys give up transitions, maybe it's from the middle third, final third actions, then losing it in build up. So obviously, I don't expect us to disrupt your build up too much.
Mhm.
And on our end, the build up is really bad, which you can see here. The build up play is not clean, and that's where there is a worry that you guys just steamroll us like 2-0, 3-0. You just create 8-10 shots, maybe 3-4 really high quality chances, and all because you disrupt us in build up, and we don't do the same to you. So there is that possibility, and we see that here, unfortunately, for Real
Yeah, I
Madrid.
think I doubt the way a Rafinha presses an Mbappe or a Vinicius will. I don't think that'll happen. That sense. So yeah, that's a point. But whether that will actually bear fruit or not, that's a separate question. And as Dom, you said, they have enough players with so much individual quality and capacity that they can hurt at any time. And then you just need two chances, and that's it. That's the game. That's the end of the game, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Okay, let's keep going. This was interesting because what I found was the zones of attack for Barca, obviously, after all the combinations and plays and so on and so forth, mostly it's coming from the right, which is the Lamine Yamal side or the almost side or the uh, and for Madrid, it's a lot more balanced. If you can see from and a lot more ground shots, cutbacks, and what have you, which we are not the best to take advantage of. Especially if you remember last year, like even in like the goals percentage scored or what have you. So Madrid plays that way. So to both of you, is that a weakness that we need to combine with, given that they will play behind Balde for sure, right? And Kunde can only tackle that much. Kubarsi and Inigo are very good as positional defenders, but they're not like dueling defenders per se from that perspective, and so on. So based on like any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, it's kind of Madrid are very difficult to pin down in terms of okay who plays where at all times. It's just so mobile, so free, and that's one of the things that Ancelotti does. It just gives them that freedom to express themselves. Right? They can Mbappe can be floating left and right. Vinicius can be centrally. He can be left, and the same goes for Valverde, Modric, Bellingham. They're all over the place. So it doesn't surprise me that they have actions and crosses, if you will, from all sides. It's the result of the players not having a set position at all times. So it's not as positional, it's more of a relationist type of structure, if you will. But it's difficult. It's difficult because when you do have a team like that, and when it fully clicks, and all that individual quality kind of gets gels in with the rest of the squad as a collective, then that's when it's really dangerous. But until that point, they can look a bit disjointed. They can look a bit maybe free flowing because they don't really have a set structure or tactic to fall back to in case it doesn't work. So it's a double-edged sword. Once it clicks, it's amazing, but until that point, it can be a bit shaky.
But do you think they will be able to do that though? Like, this is obviously the last 5 games that Madrid has played, right?
Yeah.
Now,
I know.
with Barca and the insanely high line that Barca is going to play, risk, high reward. Do you think this is something that will be very easily doable?
It's difficult. I think we're playing Madrid at a good time in the season, right? If this was further down the long the season, I would be more scared than I am now, right? Obviously, they still, according to the data, according to the games that they've played so far, they still need a bit more time to get to hit that top speed that we know that they will eventually hit. So I'm I'm happier playing them now than in a couple of months' time, because in a couple of months' time, this team might look entirely different than it does now.
Sid, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little deceiving looking at the cross map in that the crosses haven't been good, and so it's like Mendy is not that dangerous on the left, and so that's where I guess I'm not as worried. Looking at your cross map, I would prefer that all the crosses come from the side. Mendy can defend them. But on our end, he's not overlapping too effectively anymore. Even without Cruz, it's even harder to use him. So most of the left side is coming from Vinny just being really good. Sometimes Mbappe or Rodrigo drift there, but a lot of times they're doing Fede, Mbappe, Rodrigo. They're all drifting to the right side together. So you get this like symmetric map, but there's no attackers who can head the ball other than Bellingham in the squad. So the crosses haven't been that dangerous. It's a little deceiving, even though it looks symmetrical.
All right, so yeah, we'll see how that pans out. Now, successful dribbles in the final third. Now, this is obviously very interesting because both teams have great dribblers. Obviously, Madrid have a lot more than Barca, and you can see from the map itself, Barca is a little bit right skewed because of Lamine Yamal, obviously, and on the left is those runs that Balde makes, or sometimes Rafinha makes from that central, hybrid role that he's playing these days from that perspective. So you can see that. But most of our dribbles actually, and later we'll see, it happens in the midfield rather than in the opposition half. Whereas for Madrid, you can see it's rightfully on the left hand side. It's stacked with Vinny, Mbappe, all the players, right? So you can see there's like a curious thing of the right flank for Barca, the left for Madrid, which kind of makes it a little bit unbalanced or easy to predict for, because both teams will know where it's going to come from and can set themselves in that manner. But any other insights from that perspective? I was just looking with the shot and with the goals. Both, I would say, all these dribbles have not really resulted in goals for either of the teams. As you can see, we have dribbled a lot, but no goals have happened. Barca's goals have happened much more from positional play and into short in passes and so on and so forth. And then if you look into the number of dribbles that have led to shots, I think Barca has a little bit more comparatively compared to Madrid.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. I mean, we only have Lamine Yamal who can actually create a goal scoring
Yeah,
opportunity or a shot off of a dribble, whereas Madrid can do that with Mbappe and
anyone.
Vinicius easily, right? And you see a lot of number sevens and on Madrid's side, which doesn't surprise me at all. And Mbappe has been receiving the ball in better positions lately. I feel like he's been touching the ball a bit less, but then he's been getting it more centrally, which is seen in that on that graph as well. That's concerning for us. If he can receive in those situations and shake off a marker, shake off Kubarsi or Inigo in those central areas, that's it. That's curtains for us. So I think we have to stop him from being in those situations and getting the ball in those situations. And for us, it's going to be the same thing. I mean, we're not going to create off a dribble unless it's Lamine Yamal on the ball, right? If it's Rafinha, if it's Balde, we might get something, but I wouldn't bank on it translate into a goal or a shot even directly off of that dribble. With them, it's more of a distribution thing where can they produce a cutback after a dribble? Can they produce some sort of a good cross after a dribble? So that's more their forte, whereas Lamine Yamal can actually dribble a player and then shoot it directly after that and maybe potentially score a goal, which is why we are so right side skewed when it comes to pure dribbles. It doesn't really surprise me. And Madrid have more dribbly players, if you will, I think, and with their players drifting all over the place, you can see Mbappe and Vinicius tallying dribbles basically all over. So it's not that surprising to me. I'm not sure Sid, if this surprises you in any capacity, but to me it's about what you would expect.
I am surprised to see how many of the dribbles you see on the right side,
Mhm.
near the right half space and on from Madrid. Um, it shows that the drifting to the right hand side is really happening. But otherwise, not surprised to see the left. It's almost all Vinny on the left. It's funny.
Yeah, I know a lot of number sevens there. um, right.
And I
Could there
guess
be
I
a
expected a little more from Barcelona on the left, but
Yeah, I mean, with Balde and Rafinha, you said it yourself. Rafinha is not really a one versus one player. Neither is Balde. Balde, what he likes to do, he would rather receive the ball deeper and then carry it forward. Not necessarily beating a player one versus one from a standstill, but he wants to just carry that ball into space. That's his idea of dribbling. He can be a bit wavy down the channel sometimes, but that doesn't necessarily come
It's
off
not
often.
threatful. His dribble that it's not
Yeah.
doesn't create any danger per se. So
Mm.
on. All right.
Yeah.
Now coming to the pressing part of the game, and we already prefaced it a little bit, but this is what Barca do, right, to the build up, and you can see that that's how many recoveries we do in the final third. And there are a lot of people play an active role, starting from Lamine, Lewandowski himself, Olmo, Pedri, Rafinha, all of them lead the press, and we do recover a lot of balls in that final third, and then lead to quick transitions. Not the same velocity or volume for Madrid, because they don't play in that manner. They play in a mid block, so obviously their philosophy is that. But could this be a key to the game that's coming up? And should this not be successful, right, is Barca facing that quick transition, which can put the game to bed?
Yeah, I mean it's key for Barca definitely. The quality of the counter pressing and pressing will be absolutely crucial because if you mess that up, teams like Alaves and Villarreal and Athletic Club, they've all had their chances through that. If they manage to bypass that press, that's how you get your success against Barcelona. Now compare that to Real Madrid, who will have Vinicius and Mbappe running with the ball potentially, and Bellingham running off with the ball. The amount of threat they can generate compared to the rest of the La Liga is it's night and day. So absolutely, this will be Flick won't change this. This will be a prominent feature for Barcelona, whereas Madrid, as you said, I don't think they're a high pressing team per se, and at this moment, and will they change this for Barcelona? I don't think so.
I think so.
I don't think they will try and press Barca overly aggressively. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they go gang ho and try and do some stuff off the ball. But having Vinny, having Mbappe, who are not exactly the players who will run that much compared to a Rafinha, for example, or compared to Casado and Pedri in those smaller spaces, I don't think they will try and enforce turnovers for us in the build up. Whereas we definitely will try and do that, and that's one of the things that you can do to Real Madrid. You can disrupt the build-up because they don't really have, as said alluded to before, they don't really have that structure nailed on in the build-up. So they don't really have patterns that they always rely on. So maybe that is the way for Barca to force mistakes from them, and then I mean, I would definitely say that's going to be a prominent feature for Barcelona. Absolutely.
Sid?
Yeah, I mean, I expect you guys to press Barcelona, to press Real Madrid, and I mean, the challenge in these games for both teams is like you always want to you want to try and execute your plan, but you don't want to lean so far in where you look like an idiot. Like in Barcelona's case, your press is just something that Real Madrid isn't used to, and so if it comes off, you can obviously win a lot of these recoveries in the final third, as we see here. But if it doesn't, the chances we get, no team presses us this way. So if we break your press, it's much easier chances than we would get against other teams. So if you give it up once, then do you let that affect you psychologically? Do you not press as high? So, and then on the flip side for Real Madrid, you don't want to risk pressing too high because we know you guys are going to attack very aggressively. But you don't want to get too passive either. You want to make sure, even in the block, you're contesting spaces, you're forcing you guys into uncomfortable crosses instead of just letting you play through. So, I mean, there's a balance, but definitely worried about your press, and also excited to see if we can break it, though, for sure. Especially once we got Mbappe and you got Flick, I'm like, there's a part of me that's excited to see what happens in the catch up. Just because I feel like Flick won't back down at all. So, like, talking about those like margins for error, I feel like he doesn't care about the margin for error, at least, or he won't this first time. I think he wants to like screw around and find out if the line is too high, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Flick's going to change. Even if he's conceding, I think he's holding on to that philosophy and is going to go all in with that. And if it works out, it works out. But if and then it can be that you have a very quick phase of game where we score 2 or 3 games, which is what Barca have been doing, and that's it. That's the end of the game. But to Sid's point, if you miss, then the chances that Madrid will get against us will be far more easier than what they've got in the league against other teams and so on and so forth. And one of them will be interesting with, I think you guys have Celta Vigo today. So it'll be interesting to watch that game because Vigo's been playing good this season. So it'll be nice to see how they deal with that. Shots, again, nothing to see. I'll not spend too much time on this, but the only thing that I wanted to talk about is the time where things happen. It looks like the game between 60 to 75 minutes is very interesting for both teams in terms of scoring, creating chances, or what have you, and so on. So that was like if you look into how the game's set up, it's very similar the way Barca and Real Madrid use those blocks of time. Barca is obviously the weakest in the first 15 minutes because whatever. But the rest of them, if you see, it's very identical in the way Barca and Madrid's like game state happens. Any thoughts on why and your insights into that?
Yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, Barca kind of want to wear you down. Like over a period of time, they will make you tired. They will force you to make mistakes over time. Whereas Madrid, I don't know if they weather the storm and then then hit you once you were exhausted. Maybe that's the thing. But it's interesting to see that it's quite similar. Yeah, as you said, that it's both teams that tend to hit their peaks around that between 60 and 75 minutes. So that will be the time
Third
to
substitution basically is where things all happen. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So Sid, what is the usual Madrid game plan with these? What happens between that minute 60 and 75 that swings the games in your favor?
I mean, we just haven't been scoring much in the first half of games. So um, those minutes are, I'd say it's not every game, but just like 70% of our games, we've had to press forward more from minutes 46 to 75. So it makes sense to me. I'm more surprised for you guys that it's like that.
Mm.
Or just the first 15 minutes are, I guess, a slow start, and then you get a steady build up. For us, it's just been a slow first half in general.
Yeah, seems like. So it'll be interesting to see whether Flick uses that to his advantage in the first half, and that first half will define so much of the game per se. Let's look into some of the. I'll pass the key passes because again, it's more or less shows the same thing, right and left. So there's not much there. We know that that's what can happen. But let's look into zonal play, right? And if you look into where the recoveries are happening, obviously for Barca, it's that midfield, which is fairly evenly spaced out, and majority of that has happening down there. And then for, I would say, Kubarsian or Inigo, who is in that central defensive position and is staying through. But that's where most of the turnovers and recoveries are happening. Whereas for Madrid, it's a little bit more, it's slightly different. But any thoughts on, if you guys were coaches, what would you tell the teams in terms of, okay, how do you exploit this?
I mean, it shows you just what we talked about. Madrid are not about the high press as much. I think if you compare their numbers in recoveries to Barcelona's numbers in recoveries in the final third, you can see that Barca are more aggressive. They do tally more. They have more volume, but also more success, kind of higher percentages there in the front line. So it doesn't really surprise me. But both teams do want to kind of box you in the midfield and press you in that midfield. That's where the collapses happen, at least for Barcelona. That's generally what happens because we press from outside in. That means they want to force the play down the middle channel, and then you kind of collapse.
Yep.
And you box in the position in those smaller areas where Pedri and Castro can be much more effective, and they can actually be great defenders. So that's what happens for Barcelona. They want to box you in. They want to lure you into the middle channel because they don't have Lewandowski up front.
Yeah.
They don't have someone who will run a lot in front down the center, right, from the center forward position. So he has to drop deeper, and then you have more players and theoretically less space to cover in that middle zone, and that's how Barca do it, at least. For Madrid, it's a similar thing because they want to be a bit more narrow. They want to be a bit more deeper in that 4-4-2 kind of shape off the ball, and they won't, with Vinny and Mbappe, they won't really press you up high. They won't really cause you that much concern in the build-up, and that's where Barca can actually exploit that. Back to your question, then how do you exploit that? Well, you do have the pivot who's a bit more free on the ball, and the center backs who are more free on the ball, and Barca have great distribution from the center back. So can they leverage that space, that time that Madrid will likely give them? Can we actually exploit that? We do have the quality. Now it will be all about how do we find those pockets, because Madrid are really good at closing down those pockets to Olmo, to Pedri, to Lewandowski, and even to Lamine, who will probably tuck in. So is it going to be that U shape for Barcelona, or is it going to be like what we usually see, which is Barcelona getting those pockets, access to those pockets really, really consistently, and then hurting you down the middle, which is what they often do.
Yeah, just looking at the percentages, the differences are funny. Like 13.8% final third recoveries for Real Madrid, 23.5 for Barcelona, and then the Real Madrid 43.6% in our own third to 32.4% for Barcelona. So
yeah,
pretty big gap, pretty crazy. And yeah, it seems like a lot more of your ball recoveries happen in the middle and the right, where it's kind of even for us.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that gets exploited and so on. Moving forward, this is also how you lose the balls. And again, if you see for Barca specifically, Lamine dribbles a lot, but he also loses a lot of possession. We know that, and we've talked about it, and so on and so forth. Then you have the center of the pitch where we lose more than Madrid for sure. And that's what the data at least says. So there's that chance of a transition and so on. But then as you go down, because the high line has been working, it looks a little bit slightly better. But then with Balde is good, but he's not elite yet. So you have challenges on that side, and we're missing that from that perspective. So I'd say if you tackle and Pedri is not physical, right? He's not a physical midfielder. So if Valverde is probably in that zone, I think there's chances for us to lose possession based on the data that we are seeing and so on. There are also chances on, attacking that left flank, the right flank where Balde is, or play behind with Vasquez, what have you. So those can be two areas of just entering very easily into that zone of 14 for Barca and cause challenges.
Mhm. Yeah, it's Barca don't lose the ball in the first line because that's kind of the vertical phase of Barcelona. The ball gets to the middle third very quickly and stays there for longer, and that's where the riskier sequences tend to happen afterwards. So it's kind of, yeah, and then Lamine, of course, when you have a high volume of dribbles, it's gonna always be higher percentages of loss. That's what happens with players that dribble a lot. They will lose the ball a lot. You have to get used to that. You have to accept it because even Messi and Neymar and all these players who are elite dribblers, one of the best dribblers in the world, they all lose a lot of balls. It's always going to happen, right? And it's the same for Vinicius and Mbappe, who will have a high volume, but then losses will happen. It inevitably will happen. So for Barca, yes, losing the ball in that middle third, and then Madrid starting a transition from that area towards our goal. That's what we have to be very careful with. And Madrid, they do lose. So this central channel in their first third, that's quite interesting to see, the 13.9%. If they don't have a good build-up sequence, a build-up approach or tactic, whatever it is, and we can press them and make force errors there, then that's kind of Barca's ticket to potentially counter press them into a goal scoring position, a goal scoring chance.
Yeah, 13.9. That's a lot. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, and we don't lose much in Ferland Mendy's zone, which is funny, 5.8%. But that doesn't mean he's a great build-up player or anything, but he just doesn't lose as much of it there. But yeah, that's where Chouameni has been criticized a lot because he plays right in front of those center backs, and we still lose the ball a lot in that zone when the build-up is flowing near him. And yeah, that's the big flaw for sure in the team. And we'll see how you guys exploit it. I'm definitely not excited to see it.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we can do. Right. Okay, let's see.
Now it's dribbling, something we all enjoy. Look at that right side, 34.5% from Lamine Yamal. Those crazy numbers, and the 36 from Vinicius on that side. So yeah, compensate. It's going to be a strangely topsy-turvy kind of a game. But then if you look at the center, and this is something that struck me, a lot of our dribbling actually happens in the center because of the technical players that we have, and a lot of those, threading of those passes or those creating those channels or using that central channel to overload and create quick transitions in which you have like 3 or 4 balls and you're suddenly into the final third. I think we're going to see that a lot more. But does tell you of the changing nature of Barcelona more than anything else. If you had seen the same graph 8 months ago, it would be very, very different in the way Barca was playing at that time.
Yeah, this 0% from Balde's area is very interesting. I mean, he's not really a dribble from a standstill position, as we mentioned. He needs a lot of space. So
To run.
so his dribbling won't happen in these deep areas. Only he will be more advanced. I think he's more on in the 10% that we see there on the left. That's where he will start at least, and even going further up into the winger position as well. So it doesn't surprise me that since we do have a more of a high flying fullback on that side, doesn't surprise me that there's 0% there. But yeah, Lamine, obviously a point of reference because we already talked about dribbling, so I'm not going to go deep into it. Same for Madrid as well. 36 percent on the left side. That makes complete sense because even Mbappe drifts there, so they have Vinny and Mbappe there, and they do have dribbles on the right side as well, which is interesting to see. I'm wondering who is the culprit for that. Is it Mbappe drifting? Is it Rodrigo? I'm not sure, Sid.
Yeah, who is the right flank for Madrid?
Yeah, I mean it's Rodrigo and it's Fede. It was
Fede.
Carvajal before he was getting hurt. Before he got hurt, but yeah, Rodrigo and Fede as well, and sometimes even Mbappe's been drifting there.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about dribbling, but it shows you that this will be an attacking game. Both teams will probably attack and not sit back, and that should provide entertainment per se. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. This is, however, more interesting in the terms of how you're going to unlock that mid block. So if you look at Barca and you see that 30.2% and that 18.5 and that 18.5, that's their area of creativity for sure. And that's massive compared to what you see on the Madrid side, where their area of creativity would be that final third, I would say, with the kind of players that they have, right? So it'll be a strange midfield versus forward line kind of a thing, based on the skill sets of the both teams that you talk about. I'm not talking about the defense, because honestly, like, both will build up in their own way. They're not like, it's not going to create that immediate danger per se, what have you. So, but that midfield, that's pretty interesting in the way it is set up, and the way it has evolved in the last 8 months. So let's go with Sid on this one first, and then Dom, you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is the Barcelona side more green? Just curious.
It's a comparison to the league average.
Was green like equal to league average or similar to league
Yes. So
average?
if you are like the amber, you're lower than the league average. If you're green, you're higher than the league average. That's how Y Scout
Gotcha,
analyzes it.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. And green is similar to league average. Yeah. I mean, at least for Real Madrid, I feel like our through passes are decent in the final third or middle, but in build up they're not the best, I guess. But this makes it seem a little different than that. I guess it's like just these numbers alone, it's tricky to look at because you have so many types of through passes. You have through
Yes.
passes in transition, you have the little chip through passes and build up that you're using to retain possession. And at least from this, it looks like we do a decent job keeping the ball on the flanks with those chip little through balls because we don't, at least in the previous slide, it looks like we don't dribble out of the left and right back zone too well. And then as you get to the final third, teams know what's coming. So it gets a little more predictable. That's the best read I have on Real Madrid. Barcelona is, it seems like Flick's system just manufactures a good amount. And you have a good volume of through passes, at least from what I'm seeing. Yeah, the volume of your through passes seems to be higher in most phases in most of the areas, and you seem to manufacture the through balls better. We're still working on that.
Yeah, but my question to you, Sid, would be that when you see this, the 18.5, the 30.2, the 18.5, and the 20.9, those would be the four areas that you're concerned about. And you see your defense, which is Militao, Rudiger, Tchouaméni, Valverde also, right? What would be your game plan to nullify some of this?
I mean, I would sit back. Like I would play in a block. Like not too different to the way we had to play against Xavi's Barcelona in a block. You can't get pinned too deep. You need to have someone ready to attack in transition, which we will. Um, I don't know if I played the fourth attacker or not. That's the main question. If I don't know if I played Rodrigo or four midfielders, but I would probably play Camavinga, Bellingham, Fede, and Chouameni. I would or Modric, one or the other. I would play the extra midfielder and try to defend first and foremost. So that would be the way I play. Because the extra midfielder means you err on the side of getting pinned back because you don't have that attacker. But if you play the attacker, you risk losing these duels. You risk just giving up space. Your through balls ripping through us. So, put the extra midfielder there and praise how I would go about it.
Dom?
Yeah, I think 2 points of interest for Barcelona. The 0% is interesting because we did say that this is the verticality phase or areas, but then there's 0% in through passes. How is that possible? It's because of the high line, right? So our defenders don't spend that much time in deeper areas. They just sit at the halfway of the pitch, and that's where they spam the vertical passes, right? So they kind of hover around the midfield area more than the deeper areas anyway. So that's why you get so many central through passes because that's the center backs essentially, not as much of the midfield. But yeah, that spine of 30.2 and
Inigo basically
20.9.
stands here, like,
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
line. That's what
that
he's.
line, yeah, exactly, yes. And then you have the spine, yeah, 30.2 and 20.9. Barca are a very, very central team, and this shows you that they
Yeah, they are
like
going
that central.
to
And
just
yeah,
pull them in.
yeah, so all of our best players will be there. Lamine will drift there. Rafinha will drift there. Lewandowski will drop deeper as well when necessary, and we will play passes through those areas. And that doesn't surprise me. We're not overly vertical at all times. Sometimes we do get into that trap of trying to force that. But generally speaking, knock on wood, we have been very good recognizing when to actually be vertical and when to stop and suck the momentum out of the opposition. So from that perspective, I think there's not much surprise from Barca side. From Madrid side, I mean, they're not, that central area is an area of concern. So you do have to stop those balls at the source before they get to Mbappe and Vini and Valverde moving forward, and I don't know, Vasquez, whoever it is, or Rodrigo. So it will be about effectively counter-pressing those sources in the middle of the pitch, which, we knew that would have to happen. So yeah, there we
All
go.
right. That was a lot. We went through some of the transitions, positions, stats, insights, and so on and so forth. But let's bring it home. We've been for a while.
Yeah.
Projection time, predictions, Dom. Let's go with scores.
Yeah, putting me on the spot again. I think Barca
No,
win.
we put everybody on the spot. It's okay.
No, that's fine. I think Barca win. I have to say Barca win. I'm feeling confident, not overly confident, but cautiously optimistic, if that's the right phrase for it. We are in a good moment. Real Madrid are still kind of trying to find themselves. It doesn't mean they will be bad. They won't be
Nah,
ready for this game, but
they're
they will
never
be ready.
bad in
Yeah.
classicals.
So
Never bad.
so yeah, it will be a tense affair. But I think if we can kind of get our steamroll going, if we can kind of immediately stamp our foot and stamp our authority on the game, I think there is potential for us to score a couple of goals with them not being able to react quickly enough. They will have chances, though. That's my worry. All the teams that we've played so far this season, they've all had chances, all of them. We always concede at least a couple of quite good chances to the opposition. So Madrid won't be as forgiving, I would say.
Nah.
So saying they won't score would be silly. But I think Barca 3-1. But wait, I said Barca will win against Bayern 3-1, so I can't go with the same one. I'll go. I will go 2-0 Barcelona then. I'll go 2-0
Barcelona. Sid.
See, the fact that you conceded chances every game is why I'm optimistic. Because that just feeds into my stereotype I had about like Mbappe joining and Flick on the other end. But I'm also just worried that, maybe we don't get to turn those few chances into a many chances. Maybe the absence of Joselu makes us easier to defend in a way that really sucks, that you kind of just have to live through one Clasico of making mistakes before Ancelotti pulls it out. I don't know. I'm gonna err on the side of assuming we win. Not actually. I'm just gonna assume something dumb happens though. Like obviously we get out in transition, but a bit like last year's like third and first Clasico where the ball just kind of bounces our way. So I hope that's what happens. So I guess that's not even a prediction, but I'll go with I actually think we play each other even. Maybe that's dumb, but I think we play each other like 1-1 or 2-2 on paper. But I think I'll say we win 3-2. But that's
Okay,
just
so Sid's going with 3-2. I will go at least this time with a 3-2. I think, based on what we have seen, I wouldn't have gone, but the fact that we have so many of the players returning, especially Olmo, Gavi, and so on and so forth, we'll have fresh legs, which is needed in Flick's system. I think just because of that, I think I feel 10 days ago I wouldn't have said the same thing with the squad that we had. But right now, with all the people returning, I do feel that there's an opportunity to take advantage of, which is what we will possibly try. But that said, I think cautiously optimistic to your word, Dom. But I do think, yeah, if they can break that trap, then we are in trouble. And if that happens in the first half, then we are in serious trouble. And so that's the one thing that we probably have to be mindful of. And I think Bellingham will have more space to play against Barca than he has had against most of the teams in the league till now, what they have played. Because most of those teams have played in very low blocks just to contain. Barca won't probably do that. So players like Bellingham, Valverde will have space. And when they have space, they can be quite dangerous players to contend with. So yeah, that's what I would go with. But yeah, that was good. Any final thoughts, guys, before we call it a day?
Oh, not really. thanks again, Sid, for joining. This means a lot. We are doing this more actively now, like having these live after games. Maybe you can join us after the Classical as well, and we can chat again. This was fun. I hope that you guys have enjoyed it as well. Not as many of you this time around, but that's fine. Now we'll take whatever we can get. And hopefully we've given you a good enough preview with some tactics, some stats, some general opinions, and of course predictions. Which in a week's time we can look back and see if we got anything right or not. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. That's just the nature of things. But yeah, Sid, thanks again for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Sid?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that's good. Okay, guys, thank you for joining, all of you down there. We'll obviously be back after the Sevilla game to talk about just the game and how it goes, and that'll be an interesting one, whether we win or lose. So we'll check it out. But thanks for having us.